So chapter 6, this is the chapter on view, practice, and conduct. Okay? View, practice, and conduct. So under this heading, all the issues pertaining to view, practice, and conduct is discussed, right? In the Vajra statements that are put under this heading. They all look at various different points related to. This is a very common classification system, view, practice, and conduct. So generally it is said, if you want to know, right, a particular spiritual system, what they are all about, then very efficiently you can ask, what is their view? Meaning more generally, what is their understanding of what's the problem and what's the solution? Then given that understanding, given that view, what kind of practice do they teach, prescribe? And then what kind of discipline beyond the cushion do they provide to support the achieving of the result that is articulated in the view? So sometimes a fourth is added: view, practice, conduct, and fruition or result. So this is the meaning of the overall title of this chapter. So I think it's good for us to quickly go over the Vajra statements in this chapter. Even though this text, Gongchik, wasn't composed by Kyopa Rinpoche as a, kind of systematic presentation. Nonetheless, Sherab Jungne, when he put those statements together, they are somewhat related. So to refresh our memory of what this chapter has covered up until this point, up until 6.9 and 6.10. 6.10 is where we are. I think it's good to kind of quickly. So 6.1, the Buddha taught that the Dharma that is transmitted by a lineage is profound and marvelous. Next, 6.2, all phenomena included in samsara and nirvana are one's own mind. And 6.3, all phenomena are the embodiments of momentary thoughts. All phenomena, all the things that we experience. 6.4, if something is not included in its fundamental nature, it cannot turn into that way by merely looking at it, by merely thinking of it in that way. 6.5, the guru who does not possess the characteristics cannot produce the qualities. 6.6, it is certain that the only means of cultivating realization is devotion. 6.7, view, the true view, the view that Kyopa Rinpoche accepts, is the view that is endowed with realization. Meaning something to be achieved through meditative practice rather than something to be debated and compared. This text with this text with that text with this text. No. The view that he accepts. He says, so you can maybe put, like in English, small v and big V, capital V. The capital V view that he accepts, he says, that's the only view. And regarding that view, is something to be realized. So back to that point I was making earlier. When we talk about realization, don't talk too much about it. Have a general understanding of what it is not. Then as to what it is, you begin by cultivating presence of mind awareness. And then working on removing negative karma of body, speech, and mind, then accumulate merit. When we do those things, then we get closer to realizing the view. We get closer to being endowed with realization. 6-7. And since view with a capital V is that way, then all the other views, all the other view with a small v, are all the kind of philosophical positions, all the intellectual concepts. It is this, this is that, it is not this, it is that, the example is this, the example is that. All those are skillful means if you know how to skillfully rely on them. But if you rely on them and thinking that they are the view with the capital V, you are in trouble. 6-8. As for this realization, it is not even reached. It cannot be even touched by the so-called great seal, Mahamudra, great perfection, Mahaati, Dzogchen, or great Madhyamaka. All these great systems, the most profound systems, Kyöbo Rinpoche says, even they are not the actual realization. Implication is much less, all the other views, all the other positions. 6-8. Then 6-9. The emptiness. So the realization that comes through studying, reflecting, and practicing, the realization of emptiness that comes through studying, reflecting, and practicing, contains traps and sidetracks. We finish that. Now 6-10. Habituating to realization is what meditative practice is. To habituate to realization is what meditative practice is. So here, of course, meditative practice or gompa can be many things, of course. Here, what Kyöbo Rinpoche means is, in the Mahamudra context, when we talk about meditation or meditative practice, what are we talking about? He says, we're talking about habituating what has been realized when you were introduced to the nature of your mind. So each of these statements, right, we are also provided by Sherab Jungne with. And what is it not? It is not the generating of bliss, luminosity, and non-thought. Because those three, the experiencing of bliss, experiencing of luminosity, experiencing of an absence of thoughts, are very high levels of meditation that that meditative practice can result in. But under the discussion in the commentary about the traps and sidetracks, right, to be stuck and to be led elsewhere, the three sidetracks, getting off at the wrong exit, I call it, you're on the highway to somewhere, if you get off at the wrong exit, then sometimes you'll be like completely lost. And half the day is gone, you went out the wrong exit and you didn't realize. So the three wrong exits, is the exit of experiencing bliss, thinking, oh, this must be it, or experiencing luminosity. And that means very clear the mind becomes, oh, you think this is it. Or experiencing an absence of thoughts, since that's like emptiness, then you think it's it. So Kyöbo Rinpoche says, actually, don't do meditative practices that lead to these experiences. Instead, focus on meditative practice that is about letting you habituate, get used to, another way to translate that, to get used to what have been realized when you were introduced to the nature of mind. Again, a footnote, right? You say, well, I've not been introduced yet. What should I do? Well, now then, you work on the other conditions coming together. The accumulating merit part, which is also related to the purification of 10 non-virtues part, that's all together. Then the devotion part. The devotion part, again, is not emotional devotion. It's also related to mindfulness. Mindfulness here is an ingredient of this devotion that Mahamudra talks about. Developing presence of mind. Watching the mind. Bringing the mind to the present and not being distracted. That's all part and parcel of the devotion that we're talking about here. So anyway, here, this is a very famous statement that often even gets quoted by others in a longer form. In a longer form, the statement is Gompa Mayin Gompa Yin in Tibetan. Gompa Mayin, Gompa, Gom and Gom. They are spelled slightly different, but they're related. Gompa is meditation, what we can translate as meditative practice, meditation. Gompa. Then it's related to another word, sounds the same, but spelled differently. Gompa. Gompa is to habituate. To habituate, to get used to. So the longer statement that is longer than the statement here, 610, is Gompa Mayin Gompa Yin. So Gompa Mayin, it is not meditation. Or it is not meditative practice. If you think meditative practice is about developing the experience of bliss, developing the experience of luminosity, developing the experience of absence of thought, if you think meditative, if your meditative practice is that, then what we're talking about here is not that. Gompa Mayin. Gompa Yin is, it is instead Gompa. Gompa is to get used to habituate. So here the commentary. The guru whose mental continuum is a different translation for what?
Mind stream.
Mind stream, correct. Same Tibetan translated differently. Mental continuum, mind stream, right? The guru whose mental continuum possesses the qualities based on experience introduces the nature of mind to the disciple endowed with faith. What is realized by the disciple is called realization. If you ask, what is realized? If you then ask, then okay, if that's what's called realization, then what is the content? Then it is the self-arising primordial wisdom, which Sobish prefers the Greek gnosis. It is the self-arising primordial wisdom or gnosis that is unsullied by the stains of such lofty apprehending modes as the three grades. It's kind of teasing this, lofty apprehending modes, all this fancy words and ideas and discussion taught in the three grades. including Mahamudra, you know. He says, don't get carried away by all these fancy words and terms. Unsullied, not tainted. That is, it is this ordinary consciousness. Ordinary consciousness, Tamil ki shepa in Tibetan. Tamil gi shepa. Shepa is consciousness. It's a peculiarly, distinctively Kagyu expression. First used by Gampopa. Tamil ki shepa. Interesting, he used shepa instead of sem. Sem, as in semni, is what we translate as nature of mind. Sem is mind. Semni is mindness. Literally, is mindness. The ness, right? The essence of mind. Semni. So semni, nature of mind or essence of mind or mindness, is a phrase that is found in many places in Tibetan Buddhist sources. Sakyapa, Nyingmapa, Kagyupa, Gelugpa. But whenever you see this Tamil ki shepa, ordinary consciousness, it's distinctively Kagyupa, and specifically Gampopa. Tamil ki shepa, ordinary consciousness. And shepa is really interesting, because instead of saying Tamil ki sem, Tamil ki sem as in mindness, semni, nature of mind. So a different word, he uses shepa. Shepa is consciousness. And shepa is used when we talk about the 6 consciousnesses. Remember? 6 consciousnesses: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness. So in other words, you know, Gampopa deliberately is using a very mundane term for this very special, right? Nature of mind. Ooh, right? When we say nature of mind, ooh, right? Semni, ooh. We think it's something very special, very mysterious, very profound. He purposely uses the most kind of ordinary way of saying it. So he says Tamil. Tamil is ordinary already. But instead of saying Tamil ki sem, the sem, right? The mind, the ordinary mind, literally, Tamil ki sem, he says Tamil ki shepa, ordinary consciousness. Here, ordinary means, what does that mean? What do you think? Ordinary.
Commonplace.
Commonplace, yes. And why ordinary then?
What we all have.
What we all have, yes. Yeah, so one connotation is it's not so far. It's not so far away. It's the ordinary mind. It's the ordinary consciousness. In other words, Semnit has become so objectified as, you know, ooh, that he switches it out to Tamil ki shepa, this ordinary consciousness, like this moment. As long as you're conscious, you know, it's there. Or if you're like, I don't have consciousness, then okay, no more to talk about, you know. But as long as you are conscious of, you know, like I'm conscious of this, in that moment, you know, there, right there, it is there, right there. This Tamil ki shepa, this ordinary mind. Tibetans who know about this don't like to talk about this because there's some like sectarian stuff that goes back, way back. to this time, to Gampopa's time, to Sakya Pandita's time. There's some sectarian debates. In fact, Sakya Pandita, in many of his writings, right? Remember Sakya Pandita? It's not even Gongchik or Drigong that irks him so much, intellectually speaking. Whether there's afflictive emotion or not, not for me to say. And better, no need to talk about that, But at least intellectually, what irked him so much is not even really Kyopa Rinpoche, it's Gampopa. Most of his complaints about, how people got it wrong is directed at Gampopa, actually. Well, at least directed at the way Gampopa talked about things. Again, whether there's real afflictive emotions or not, beside the point, not our business. But no doubt, many of the things that Sakya Pandita wrote, is to show how the sloppy Kagyupas got it wrong. So one of the things that Sakya Pandita accused, without naming names, but of course everybody knew who he was talking about. He calls Gampopa's Mahamudra Zen in disguise, which is an insult. He says, this is the Chinese heresy. There's a term like this in Tibetan. It says, this is the Chinese heresy, which Kamala Shila, with the support of King Tuson Detsen, already determined that this is wrong view, wrong practice, wrong dharma. And the king already banished this tradition out of Tibet. And now it has resurfaced among these people. He doesn't name names. He says it has resurfaced among these people. These people who talk like this, all this, he says, is the Chinese heresy. Supposedly, there was a debate held at Samye after Guru Rinpoche left, actually. A debate was held at Samye because there were competing forms of understanding of the Buddha Dharma. So the Tibetan king did not want confusion. And so he convened a council, it said, the Council of Samye, where on one side, those who say they represent the Nalanda tradition of Indian Buddhism, led by Kamala Shila. Then on the other side is a figure called Mahayana, a kind of a weird name. In Tibetan is Mohoyen, which means Mahayana. But historians have identified who this person is. This person, interestingly, is a Zen master, meaning a teacher of the Chan or Zen tradition, but he was actually Korean. In Chinese sources, he's called Jing He-shang, which means the Kempo. He-shang is Kempo, actually, in Tibetan terms. It's Kempo Kim. You're like, oh my God, Kempo Kim could be like half of Korea, which is true, Most Koreans' last name is Kim, Jing He-shang in Chinese, Kempo Kim. So there was a Kempo Kim that represented the other side. So apparently these two sides came to debate. And apparently Kempo Kim lost the debate. Then the king now, King Trisodentsen said, from now on, in this kingdom of mine, we should only follow the Indian way. And the Chinese way cannot continue. This is the legend. But now many historians said, that's not true. First of all, Samye debate never took place like that. There was never like, setting up a stage, you sit this side, you sit this side, and then they debated. But there was an exchange, which is writing. Apparently the king said, hey, you guys submit your thesis and you guys submit your thesis. And so there was an exchange of letters, which as far as I think historians are in agreement, maybe it was just the king reading both. And then the king coming to some conclusion, I'm going to support the Indian way. But did the king suppress the Chinese way or Chinese Korean way? No, because we have a lot of evidence that tradition continued in Tibet. Right? So the so-called heresy or wrong thought, is not that heretical, because as it turns out, so for a long while, Western scholars looking at this, earlier Western scholars, they also kind of consider the Chinese way to be some weird Chinese stuff. Like they always say, if you read older scholarship, Chan, it's influenced by Taoism. They will say things like this. Oh, it's influenced by Taoism. Chan or Zen. Oh, it's a Taoist influenced kind of Buddhism. You'll find people writing like this. Older sources, but even now, some people writing by quoting these old sources and say Chan or Zen. Oh, that's Taoist influence. But now that we have more research done about the Mahasiddhas, Tilopa, Naropa, Maitripa, Saraha, all these figures, right? The Mahasiddhas in India, it turns out like the Chan, the things taught in Chan, very similar to the Mahasiddhas. Likewise, Gampopa very much grounds himself in the teachings of the Mahasiddhas, as well as Atisha's Kadampa tradition. But through Milarepa, through Marpa, the Mahasiddha, tradition. So now more scholars are seeing how the weird Chan stuff, what was considered weird, it's not some sort of like thing that just appeared in China because of Taoist influence. Of course, Chinese Buddhism used Taoist vocabulary, which is to say Chinese vocabulary, just like Indian Buddhists use quote unquote Hindu vocabulary, which is just Indian vocabulary, what the dominant culture is. But both Chan and both Kagyu very much connected to the Mahasiddha tradition. Maitripa, Saraha, in Chan's case, is Bodhidharma and Bodhidharma's lineage. So Our Holiness Drigong Kyabgun, very interested in the Chan in ancient Tibet. He has published a couple of books. He has edited a couple of texts about the history of Chan. So in his teachings, when he gives teachings, Our Holiness, he refers to a lot of Chan material, Zen material. Of course, the Tibetans, when they hear that, they're very uncomfortable. Because Sakya Pandita's labeling of Kagyupa as Chinese heresy has really caught on. So as a result, forever the Kagyupas in Tibet, have to defend themselves against that. And they will always write, we are not that, we are not that, we are not that, but they don't offer any evidence. So Kagyupas have become very self-conscious, The minute you say something like, oh, what Gampopa said is something like what the sixth patriarch said, in the Chan. Oh, no, we're not, We have nothing to do with that. But here, Tamil Gishepa, ordinary consciousness. In Chan, there is a very similar expression. In the Chinese Chan Zen, there's a very similar expression. So those of you who know Chinese, what am I talking about? Wei Ting.
Any clue? Any clue?
Very common one. 平常心. The ordinary consciousness. 平常心. 平常 literally this compound. 平 is like it literally flat, but flat with the connotation of common. Common to all. 平. Flat. Also related to actually the word for peace is 太平, the great flatness. The great like equally. 太平. 平. 长 is like continuous. It has connotations of like continuous, continuously. So continuously kind of like universally equal. So we use this in a non-technical way. 平常, like even in modern Chinese, it means ordinary. It means everyday. The everyday mind, the everyday mind, the everyday, the day-to-day, the ordinary consciousness, mind. 平常心. So there's one statement in the Chan tradition. 平常心是道. 平常心 is the Tao. Tao means the path. It also means the result. Tao can mean path. Tao can mean result. So 平常心是道. The ordinary consciousness is the path. I believe this is what, Gampopa is also talking about. Anyway, coming back to the commentary, yeah? As it is said, today the glorious Guru taught the introduction to the primordially innate nature, and I realized it. This is Saraha, one of the Mahasiddhas said, his Guru taught, introduced him to his primordially innate nature, and he realized it. One story from the Chan tradition, from the Zen tradition. In Korea, this is pronounced as Sion. Sion, Chan, Zen. An example I want to give is the pointing out nature of mind. Introduction to nature of mind. It's a legend, whether it happened in this way or not, beside the point again, So it said that Bodhidharma, the first that brought this tradition to China, after he arrived, after he looked around, he could not find any suitable vessel, right? Any suitable disciple to teach. So then he thought, maybe this is a waste. I came all the way. But anyway, he decided not to leave yet. And he decided to spend time doing his own meditation. So it said that for years, he meditated in a cave. But one day, one practitioner, one monk, came to seek instructions from him. So that means, they have karmic connection, right? So this monk came, and it said that he came to the cave and asked for guidance, asked for instructions, and Bodhidharma ignored him. And so then he knelt, this disciple, Huike knelt in front of the cave for a long time until winter came. Then it started to snow. He continued to kneel there. And Bodhidharma continued to ignore him. Until they say, snow came until, snow started to accumulate. And he still would not go. Finally, Bodhidharma turns around and say, what do you want? He says, I want your guidance. Bodhidharma say, guidance to do what? He said, I need you to guide me how to pacify my mind. Then Bodhidharma said, what's wrong with your mind? He says, my mind is suffering. In other words, I'm suffering, But the expression is, my mind is suffering tremendously. And Bodhidharma said, and you want me to do what? He says, I want you to help me pacify this mind. And Bodhidharma said, okay, now produce this mind. Show me this mind. And I will pacify it for you. It is said that in that moment, Huike realized nature of mind. Of course, not at that expression in the Chan material, but basically, he got it. Because he then answered Bodhidharma. I mean, you could imagine, right? In that moment, it's like, okay, I'm going to show. And then he's like, wait. He said, but I can't find this mind. Then Bodhidharma said, there, it's pacified. And it said, Huike had a moment of awakening, saw nature of mind. In the Chinese tradition, it's actually called later, it's called Jianxing. In Japanese, it's Kensho. Some of you who have read Zen material might have seen this word, Kensho, Jianxing. So he saw his nature. Bodhidharma says, see, it has been pacified. Now go. It said that Huike became the successor to Bodhidharma. So that is an introduction to mindness, nature of mind. This story is a lot more dramatic. It said that Huike cut off his hand to get Bodhidharma's attention. So imagine the dramatic effect of white snow, so pure, so clean. And then in his desperation, he lopped off his hand and threw his hand into the cave. Then it said that the Bodhidharma then turned around and said, what do you want? If it was anyone other than Bodhidharma, you probably run, there's a madman out there, who just lopped off his hand and threw it into my cave. But the story says that happened to kind of point out the sincerity of Huike, the devotion, the sincerity. That's talking about Guru Yoga. Historians have found other references that said that Huike actually lost the hand because of a robbery. Some bandit chop off his hand. So maybe the chopping off the hand wasn't the way to get Bodhidharma's attention. It's a little bit disturbing if you think that he actually did that, at least for me, oh my God, why did you chop off your hand? What is Bodhidharma going to do with your hand, So now, it is the meaning of this statement. If one has realized it, once you have seen this nature of mind, to get accustomed and habituate oneself to that gnosis that is realized first, without getting trapped or sidetracked through such things as the three faultless samadhi. The three faultless samadhi is the samadhi of bliss, the samadhi of luminosity, and the samadhi of non-thought. without getting sidetracked or trapped by such things as the three faultless samadhis, and to maintain it in an unfabricated manner, is called practice. Practice is also the same word. This is gom. To cultivate, to meditate. It's called practice. It's called meditate or meditative practice. The great Lord Drigungpa said, it is not practice, it is habituation. This is that line. Gompa mayin, gompa yin. It is not meditative practice. It is not meditation. It is not practice. It is habituation. In other words, it's not something that you improve, It's something that you get used to. It's not something that you have to build up. You don't have to build up this nature. This nature is this nature. It's the nature. It is bringing habituation to full maturity. Since that habituation depends on yourself, you should continuously set your mind in equipoise. Equipoise here, it's also samadhi, but this is a different kind of samadhi. This is not getting blissed out, or the mind is so clear, wow, or the mind has no thought now, so peaceful. Not that. Such a practice is the maintaining of that original state that is free from fabrication. If you dwell focused, concentrated in that state, there's no difference between amid distraction and solitude. That means whether you remain alone or you are in the midst of everybody else and everything else, there's no more difference. So Chodra quotes, Vinaya Kushtra Kavastu says, to practice like Katyayana and rest completely in the inner experience without distraction, and to dwell in that is the application of mindfulness to the mind. If one dwells in that, the other three applications of mindfulness are included therein. And this is talking about satipatthana, the applications of mindfulness, or often translated as foundations of mindfulness, which is the four mindfulness. Mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of sensations, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of dharmas. So here in this quote, it says, you have to cultivate mindfulness. And specifically mindful of mind. Regarding the perfect turning inward, the Chakkasamvara Basic Tantra says, by turning the mind inward, you attain any siddhi you desire. Any accomplishment that you are interested in is to be achieved by turning the focus towards the mind. Therefore, based on the undistracted application of mindfulness, the four correct abandonments and so on arise in one's mental continuum. And thereby, one generates all the virtuous qualities, such as the 37 elements of awakening through this samadhi. The great Drigungpa said, the great authoritative path of the Buddhas of the three times is continuous awareness, uninterrupted mindfulness. Gyaltsen Nam Ki Lam. The text 1271 is Yawe Sanje Ki Du Drempe Zung Drempaye sometimes. Drempa is mindfulness. I don't know why sometimes Sobish use mindfulness, sometimes he use awareness. It's a little confusing. But of course, 900 pages, trying to stay consistent. Sometimes it's hard. This is not his fault, editor. The editor should catch this and say, hey, here you use awareness, but elsewhere you use mindfulness. So same word, in the Tibetan. Here, in this case, continuous mindfulness, drenpa. Mindfulness here means, not forgetting. Not the, current mindfulness for stress reduction or not those things, okay? I mean, they're related, obviously, but here it's talking about this mental faculty of not forgetting. So what are you not forgetting here? So there's always an object, right? Not forgetting body, not forgetting sensations, placing your mind on, anchoring your mind with the experience of sensations arising, ceasing, or anchoring your mind on body, or anchoring your mind on mind, or anchoring your mind on dharmas, phenomena. So here is anchoring your mind, on the nature of mind, on the ordinary consciousness that has been realized as your nature. So the great authoritative path, sometimes translated as the great royal path of the Buddhas of past, present, and future, is continuous mindfulness. Therefore, to overcome and abandon negative factors, increase all positive factors, and gather all the roots of virtue, there's nothing one must practice but this samadhi. The Lord Pamodrupa said, abandon all hopes and wishes, such as for supernatural perception and supernatural powers, and look at your mind. So many people, want to cultivate meditative practice because they're interested in these mysterious, magical things, supernatural powers, the ability to heal. These days, supernatural perception and supernatural powers, maybe we're not so attracted to, but we have our forms of magic that we're attracted to. We want to have the power to heal. Oh, so many people mix their Dharma practice with healing. Yes, it's good if you're able to help others. But again, don't confuse the two things. When we do medicine Buddha practice, for example, don't be so quick to, I'm going to do it and help others. There can be no result without causes. So you have to plant the causes. So it's good if you are attracted to medicine Buddha practice. But if you think, like doing a few medicine Buddha mantra, you can now go heal people, unwise. That's not how we help. If you do not separate from looking at the mind, it is certain that all the Buddha qualities, such as the 10 powers, the 18 unique qualities, and the 4 kinds of fearlessness, will come to you in the first intermediate state. Meaning, the first intermediate state is talking about the 4 bardos, which is the bardo of this life. The ordinary bardo of this life is the first intermediate state. Second bardo is the bardo of luminosity at the time of death. Third bardo is the bardo of reality, which is where all the visions arise in the post-death state. And the fourth bardo is the bardo of becoming, taking rebirth. So generally, when someone has died, we say the first 21 days, basically this person is in the bardo of visions, the bardo of reality, where you'll see all these visions arising. At that first 21 days, you're more connected to this life that you have just left. You see the peaceful deities, wrathful deities, if you have been introduced to these deities. If you have not been introduced, I don't know, who knows? If you're not been introduced to these deities, I don't think you will perceive the deities. They will manifest, these energies will manifest in a different way. Then after the 21 days, you begin to see visions of your future life. That's the bardo of becoming. So these are the 4 bardos. So here when he says the first intermediate state, he's referring to this lifetime. So even within this lifetime, he says, if you focus on mind, looking at the mind, maintaining that, then all the Buddha qualities will arise. That means you no need to chase these qualities. They will arise, right? If that's what you're interested in. Yeah? Good. Then we're done today. If you are interested, tomorrow, in the footsteps of the Kagyu masters of the golden lineage continues from 9 to 11. There'll be a live stream on Facebook. And there's also Zoom access as well, hosted by Dragón Kagyu Brazil. That will be from 9 to 11. Last 2 weeks, I gave a more kind of general understanding of lineage and some, general comments about the early lineage fathers. Now, this week, I will be focused more specific on these 3 Kagyu founders. And then next week, on Jigten Sumgön and his legacy. And then the 4 classes are over. Other things I want to bring to your attention. Lojong series is about to be completed. Maybe 2 more weeks, 2 more classes, and then we're done. At some point in August, I will decide soon. There will be a 2-day home retreat program starting on Friday evening, actually. So, and ending on Sunday afternoon on Medicine Buddha. There's been a request from someone because of their own health concerns, a request to possibly do a Medicine Buddha program. Then, of course, during these times, the Medicine Buddha activity, we can not so much think like, oh, we're going to go heal others, but we can add to the healing energies, so to say, that everyone is activating to protect. So I will announce this once I know when that is happening. Chanchu Semchu Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyur Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Bell War Show. Yeah.
Dr. Lam,
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
Regarding the ordinary consciousness, what's the difference between this with the one in the 4 reliance when we talk about relying on your wisdom?
That's
mind?
different. That's clearly different. There we're talking about the conceptual mind and the need to not use your conceptual mind to understand these things, but to break the conceptual mind so that it's primordial wisdom that is perceiving the final goal. It's different.
So does it mean that here the ordinary consciousness actually is equivalent to the wisdom mind that's mentioned in the 4?
No, you should not try to match the two. The emphasis is different. Here, Gampopa is deliberately using an expression of ordinariness. Here, it's to address, what in English, the expression, I don't know how to explain this, to the fetishizing, the objectifying of this nature of mind as like this very mysterious, very special. So then Gampopa said, no, this is the ordinary mind. Yeah, the four reliances is criticizing or critiquing or pointing out something else. Here is pointing out something else. When you try to match the two, then you might become a great scholar, but you're missing the point here. The point here is, Gampopa, one reason is, to pull down all this hoo-ha over, nature of mind, nature of mind. One reason. Second reason is related to Gampopa's understanding of Gampopa's what is called co-emergence, meaning that every moment of mind, where is Buddha mind? Buddha mind is right there. It's just that we don't see it. Why we don't see it? Why we don't experience it? Why we don't operate from that position? Because of a problem of perception. We misperceive what is going on, and so we have become deluded. So this is related to Gampopa's, namto choku. He in another context, he even uses a clearly negative namto, conceptual thoughts. Namto. He says namto choku. Namto is dharmakaya. So Gampopa uses very provocative expressions. For Sakya Pandita, he wants to match all the terms, He wants to take this text. Wow, how can you say this is this, That's Sakya Pandita. Very clean, very clear, But Gampopa is saying, things are not like that.
Okay, thank you.
Gampopa says, things are not like that. Reminds me of this story I've told before, This great Abhidharma scholar in Europe, having heard that there's a great meditation master in Thailand, Ajahn Chah, who is in our generation, passed away maybe 20 years ago. Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah attracted a lot of Western disciples. So this great Abhidharma scholar, Abhidharma means the higher Dharma, which is all about categories, Oh, so detailed, their analysis of mind and phenomena and all that, So then she thought, I should go meet this meditation master. Maybe then he can, show me all the things I still don't understand in the Abhidharma. So she came, and stayed a while, but she's not getting the kind of answers that she wants, And she keeps wanting to, when Ajahn Chah is giving teachings, on how to watch the mind, how to let go, how not to cling. Ajahn Chah's, one of Ajahn Chah's favorite thing is put it down, let go, put it down, put it down. All concepts, put them down. Even the concept, so sometimes people will want to ask him to talk about, is it better to be an arhat or to be a bodhisattva? So obviously these are people who have read these debates, Mahayana, Hinayana, So when they ask him that question, whoever asked that question is probably asking him, expecting him to say arhat, because they're Theravadins. Theravada, it's not that Theravada don't accept bodhisattvas. Theravada just say, it's not necessary to go the bodhisattva route because it's so impossible. realistically go for the arhat fruit, you know. So they were expecting Ajahn Chah to say that. Ajahn Chah says, if you try to be an arhat, you will have the suffering of an arhat. If you try to be bodhisattva, you will have a suffering of bodhisattva. Even if you try to be the Buddha, you will have a suffering of Buddha. Put it all down. So his answers are all like this, you know. So this Abhidhamma scholar, you know, will not give up, you know, still want to ask about all the categories. Then one day, finally, Ajahn Chah said, you know, ma'am, this is a woman, this scholar. He goes, ma'am, you are like that farmer, you know, who every morning goes into his chicken coop, and instead of collecting chicken eggs, collects chicken poop. Says, don't do that. Poop, of course, Ajahn Chah didn't say this. If we carry this story forward, right? Poop is a byproduct of having chickens. So to that degree, it's necessary. And if you collect the poop, you know, to go fertilize your field, very good. But the problem is if you collect the poop and you try to make omelette, disastrous. And the main reason for keeping chicken is actually so that you have omelets. And if fancier, you bake cakes with the eggs. The main reason is not to collect the poop. If you can collect the poop to do something with it, good. But don't make omelets out of chicken poop. Very similar to, it's such to me, you know, it's like, oh, these are like kagyupas, you know, in the forest of Thailand. Of course, it drives, you know, the scholars up the wall. They're like, you're so sloppy with your categories, with your definitions, you know. This is from Milarepa's side of things. Milarepa's influence, which is then Maitripa's influence, Saraha's influence, Tilopa's influence, Naropa's influence. Ta-ta.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.